All right. I am very curious, excited to talk to these two individuals about a conversation that I don't see out there publicly very much, but I think we're all, I guess now, I don't want to use the word inundated, but I think it's more discussed and in the media. And so I thought, I want to go to two people who are living it and also two people who are very open about their transitions. So today on the show, we have Gabe Pagoba. You know him from 90 Day Fiancé. Gabe has been on the Sarah Fraser Show. So brave. He is the first trans 90 Day Fiancé cast member ever. Told his whole story. I mean, and Gabe, what I love about you, honey, is like you go there. You're like, ask me anything. I'm like, this is my man. Like, I love you are, and you do it on your own YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's because I don't realize how much information I say until I realize and look back. I'm like, oh crap. I said, ugh. My mouth goes faster than my brain. So I just kind of talk and then it catches up to me later.
No, it's so refreshing. And Alia Ishmael is here as well. And Alia has been brave on her TikTok. She has hundreds of thousands of followers, and she talks about detransitioning. So, born female, transitioned to a man for a period of time, transitioned back. And you, Alia, tell your story so bravely. I found out about you because I said to Gabe, Gabe, I want to do this conversation because I rarely see it out there of someone who's transitioned and detransitioned, because I feel as though there's a stigma online where in the trans community, to some degree, it's like taboo to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, almost taboo to detransition. And there almost seems like this undercurrent of therapists not being supportive of it, of parents not being supportive of it, but please correct me. I just think that that's out there. And I thought, I want to have this conversation of why there's any undercurrent of not support. And is that even true?
Yeah, I think like you're pretty accurate in that, of those thoughts. I think it's a little bit better than 3 years ago when I first started talking about it. But like Gabe, like sometimes I'm so open because I want it to be normal, like we're human beings going through this experience, and I know that we're not the only ones going through it. So might as well just talk about it and share, and give that information that's so deeply needed.
Yes.
That's very true what you said about how I think that's why I'm so open about it, because to me it doesn't seem like it's something abnormal. For me, it's like people tell me, "Oh, well, how do you do it? How do you do this?" And I just kind of talk about it because for me it's normal. It's not something abnormal. I live it every day. It's just regular. It's like
Yeah,
somebody
it's our
saying, "Oh,
life.
I washed my hair this morning." For me it's like, "Oh yeah, well, I had my shot this morning." It's like normal. But it just depends what your normal is. But for me, that's why I overshare. That's perfectly worded. It feels normal to talk about it.
Can you two both start at when did you both decide that you were going to transition? Like, how did you know that you were trans?
I can let Gabe start if he'd like.
Yeah,
Okay.
Gabe, go ahead. Tell us.
All right. So long story short, so when I was, I think, like 16, I came out as, lesbian because I didn't, this was early 2000s. I'm getting old. And I didn't know I didn't know that a girl can transition to a boy. So I'm like, "Oh, I'm a lesbian that's, dressed like a boy, blah, blah, whatever." And then I came in my 20s and something on YouTube popped up and he was like transgender man to woman to man. And I was like, "Arf?" I'm like, "What? You can do that?" And so that's when I started I like watched his videos for days, all day long for days. And I'm like, "This is me." And then it just everything started clicking. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, all right, I need to do this." And so that was like the point where I was like, "Oh, I'm trans." But I was just afraid to tell anybody. So I did everything undercover for like the first 4 months of my transition. Nobody even knew that I was on hormones.
And Gabe, how old were you when you started taking hormones?
I think I was like 22, I think. Yeah,
22.
22.
Okay. And when you were on my show previous, I mean, you talked about everything. You've had top surgery,
Yeah.
you've had bottom surgery. And
No top surgery. I just got lucky.
oh, no top surgery.
I
Okay.
only had bottom surgery, but I had 3 surgeries for it. And then I had to get the hysterectomy.
Okay, got it. And you were
Mhm.
so open on the show, and you were saying to people, which I rarely hear this, but you were saying to other potential trans individuals, like, you should really know who you are before you do these surgeries because they're painful, they're super expensive, they're very long recovery in many cases. Like, and Alia, that's what I was so attracted by you. You guys are so truthful, I think, in a way where everything in our society is glamorized, right? Weight loss,
Mhm.
everything, looking younger, just get a facelift, just get,
Mhm.
and it's so much more than that emotionally and physically than what you hear in so many aspects of life.
That's very true. I
Yeah.
would say that.
Yeah.
Mhm. You go on.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, like, even though we're adults, we're so young. We don't understand how this is really going to affect us or how we're going to look when we're old. Like, we're thinking about this moment right now, too. So, even when we're told, like, this is how this surgery is going to go, this is what it's, when you're in the community and you're around so many people that identify the same as you or feel the same as you, um, it's like getting it's like when you talk about surgeries, you're like, oh yeah, I'm scheduling my hysterectomy. I'm so excited for it. I'm scheduling my top surgery. I'm so excited for it. But we're not like really talking about like the other feelings and things that can happen with that, and then how it's going to be later on. And not about regret or anything like that. That's like, let's just take that out of the equation. It's just about the healing process. How I know so many friends who had bottom surgery that had so many complications, and it's just because it's just not working for their body, or even hormones. There's so many people that I've seen and know that have taken hormones and it just does not go with their body. And you can see because they're like inflamed, their skin is having a lot of issues, their voice is not dropping, like their hair is not coming in, like, and that's when you know the hormone's not working for you. But then it comes to the point is like, what is it worth it for me? And sometimes it's worth it for people to go through all of those complications and such because they just don't want to be perceived as how they are in that current moment. And so, like, you do need to be sure, but at the same time, you can be so sure. And 5, 10 years from now, you're like, I don't think I'm sure anymore because those things that you did aren't worth it anymore for you. But when you're young, it's so easy to be like, yes, I'm going to go do this. Usually you're healthy, you're thinking about the moment, all of that. And then you get older and you're like, you know what, maybe that wasn't the best idea for me.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Alia, how old were you when you knew you were trans?
So I officially came out as trans, and that was just socially. I didn't take any hormones, nothing like that. I was around 18 years old. I came out as bisexual first, so similar to Gabe. And I was around 16. I always had an attraction to women though, since I was like in the first grade. Like first grade, we went to class on the first day. I was like, I have a crush on him and I have a crush on her. And that was it. I didn't think anything else of it. um, I have a very different childhood where I had gone through sexual trauma and abuse. And so it escalated that process of going through my sexual experiences at a very early age as well. And so I think that affected me within my body issues as well. So I was a huge tomboy as a kid. And so when I had my first ever queer partner, that was around the age of 17, they came out to me as trans. That was the first time I ever heard of a trans person.
Mm.
And when they described their feelings, I was like, I kind of feel like that. And I didn't explore it too much more until I went to college. And in Michigan, I went to Eastern Michigan. And at the time in 2012, they had the largest year of like LGBT students, the year that I went. Um, and so when I went there, I couldn't believe how many trans people there were around me. Like it was insane. People who had transitioned, people medically, people who didn't. And so from there, at 18, I started to relate to the community more. And then I was in it. My other like heterosexual cisgender life was like non-existent. I was just surrounded by queer people 24/7. And it wasn't until I was 20 going on 21 when I decided to medically transition.
Talk to me, both of you. Did you do any therapy? One of the things that you hear a lot when you read any articles, mostly about kids transitioning under 18, that they have to see therapists and then the therapists recommend, potentially a protocol. Did you both go to therapy before you started your transition?
Yeah, so I had to go to therapy, but I believe I only had like three or four sessions until I was able to get testosterone, um, and medically transition. But when you also want to get another surgery, you have to get therapy also to get clearance to get that.
Even
And
even as an adult, even in your 20s. Okay.
yeah, and so first I had to get a letter of recommendation to start hormones, and then years later, when I wanted to have my bottom surgery, then I had to get two more letters of recommendations from two different therapists, and I had to get a letter of recommendation from my prescribing doctor who prescribed me testosterone. So it's not just like a one and done thing. It's like sometimes you have to see multiple. You have to get multiple clearances.
And who do you have to give these clearances to? A surgeon, your insurance company? Who?
The insure Both the insurance company and the surgeon, the doctor who's doing it.
And Alia, what
And there's
about
very specific guidelines also. It has to be like in a format written this, like, it's pretty well, I wouldn't even say it's detailed though, but it's like a specific format. It has to follow the W path guidelines, and that's world something something, I don't know.
so yeah, okay. So
Yeah,
some form of checks and balances that they've put into place with surgeons and insurance companies to
exactly.
essentially say, like, you want to do this is
Exactly.
they're covering their
Mhm.
ass. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Alia, what about for you? What was your therapy experience?
Yeah, so like Gabe, like I had to do all of those things, but it was very easy for me. And I there's like two things that I think about that is like, was it easy because this was the path that I was supposed to go on and all of these opportunities were just arising, right? Like when we want something, if it's working, you'll go through all the hoops really easily, and that's like what you're meant to do. And if you're not meant to do it, you're gonna see so many blockages, right? Um, and I like look at that in like a spiritual sense. So for me, I'm very like, I want to go to the best. So in Ann Arbor, there, like, I went to the best therapist. And on that first therapy visit, I was there for probably about 30 minutes. And the therapist said, I do believe that you're trans. And if I could write you a letter today, I would. But the guidelines are we have to wait 6 months. And I felt very uncomfortable because I felt like I felt nervous because I was like, we barely even had a conversation about this. And there's so many other layers that I need to go through, like of my trauma and stuff that wasn't even being addressed. There was no like, okay, well, why do you feel this way? You know what I mean? Like, and so I didn't go back to her. And I waited probably about 4 or 5 months. And I went to another therapist through Eastern Michigan. When you're at the college there, they give you like 10 visits complimentary in your first year to see a therapist if you need it, outside of like health insurance. And so I saw this woman for 6 weeks. Um, we went in depth a little bit. I still wasn't ready to talk about my sexual trauma at that age. I was still in this part where I want to kind of like move on from it, and
Right.
not like dissect it. And so, even though we did touch on it at the end of those 6 weeks, I thought she was going to now write me a letter to start hormones. And she told me, she said, I don't doubt that you're trans, but I think you need to work through these other things in your life before you add on something so life changing. And at that time, I didn't want to hear that. I wanted that letter. And so she said, if you want that, she's like, then I recommend you making an appointment with that previous therapist that you saw, and go from there. And I said, okay. So I made an appointment. And even though I didn't see that therapist that entire 6 months, because of that visit, because I still identified as trans, I used the same pronouns, all of those things, and 6 months had passed, she wrote me a letter that day. And then I had to just wait 3 months for the prescribing doctor to take a new client because she really recommended this doctor in Ann Arbor. And so, yeah, like I got the letter, and then 3 months later, I was able to to go to that appointment. And on that appointment, I was able to start hormones as well. I went to the pharmacy and came right back to do it. And so when I say it was easy, like that's why I feel it was easy. Like, yes, I had to wait the 6 months, but like I went to a therapist that was like ready to give me my letter immediately. And I don't, I'm not like angry at her about that, but I'm just like, we never talked about detransitioning and the possibility of that. Like, I made a documentary on my transition, and it's the therapist that is in that documentary. And there's a scene where I say, I'm confused about my sexuality and my gender because I'm sleeping with men again, but I'm perceiving myself as a woman or a feminine person in bed with them. But in my day to day, I'm presenting as a masculine male. So why am I doing that? And she doesn't think about detransitioning. She doesn't think about how I might feel like a woman. She just says, like, the most masculine men still have a feminine side. But the way that I word it is, it's so deep, because why am I making myself this woman in these sexual experiences? You know, there's something deep about that for me personally. And so it is frustrating a little bit, because I sought guidance from her, this gender therapist that had been doing it for 20 something years. You would imagine that someone like that thinks about every complexity, you know, of this journey. And so I just didn't know that I was never like, well, Alia, if you don't want to be on hormones anymore and you don't want to transition, you don't have to. That was never said to me. And I think that if that was said to me, my experience would have looked completely different.
You two both have huge social media outlets where you talk about your transition and detransition constantly. What do you guys hear from in your community about therapists? Are the therapists over? Because at least from, my perspective, right? So this, just like reading, not really a part of the trans community. You hear more, Alia, like the first therapist that you're going to. You hear that now these therapists, and even the perception is even schools to some extent are like, if someone says they're trans, that's it. Like, you're trans, we're supporting you, you should get hormones. What are you guys hearing in your own community? Is that the case? Where do you think therapists are? Are they too scared to say no? Are they too hungry to say yes? What's the overall feedback you guys are seeing that you work with every day?
I think they're saying yes to people transitioning way too easy, because I actually met somebody and they were like, oh, I'm getting my letter soon. The therapist said I just have one more appointment because, I really want to get my girlfriend pregnant.
What? What? Okay, wait. So this person wrote to you, and they're born, they're what are they, female
Born
to male?
female.
Okay, female to male transition. And their boyfriend wants to get them pregnant, so they want to transition? What?
No, the girl, this person is identified as a lesbian first,
Okay.
like me, and wanted to transition to a man because he wants to get his girlfriend pregnant. And he says, I only have one more visit, and my therapist said they'll write me a letter. If you still can't get a girl pregnant. You still have like
Yeah.
women juices. You don't have sperm. So I feel like, wow, this therapist is really gonna give you a letter of recommendation when the only reason why you want to do this is to have a penis to get your girlfriend pregnant, and that's impossible. So I
Yeah.
think
That's interesting.
they're being, I think therapists are saying yes to writing letters way too easy. I honestly think so, because and like you said, I've never had a conversation with any therapist at all about detransitioning. They don't talk about that at all, which I
Mhm.
think that they should. I think that the consequences of transitioning is not spoke of enough, because if I had that in my mind, I would have been like, a little bit more cautious. But for me, it's just like, transition. This is going to be the top. This is going to be great. There's nothing bad. There's nothing. This is how I feel right now, and this is it. But they don't talk about, like, what if you change this way? What if you feel this way? What happens if, But I think they should put doubt in the person's mind.
I
Like,
think
it's
That's
not
there's,
all,
so,
everything is going to be great in rainbows,
I mean, it's so like, okay, you both
and
have had
find the
surgeries.
underlying reason. Because if they're just trying to transition to get their girlfriend pregnant, then that's,
Well, yeah,
preparing for
someone's
a
not
rude
being
awakening.
fully realistic with them either, right? I mean, someone's not being fully truthful. Okay, but when you two actually, because you both had surgeries, you've
Mhm.
talked openly about that, and you've even talked about at moments having almost a little bit of surgery letdown, which to me I equate to when I yo-yo dieted for years. I gained and lost 150 pounds, and I always believed in my mind if I was skinny, everything would be great. I'd have
Mhm.
the perfect boyfriend, I'd have the perfect job, no one would ever be mean to me. I mean, life would be great. And then of course you get skinny and you realize nothing until you change your mental state, nothing changes, even if
Mhm.
your body changes, right? But when you two were going through surgeries, I'm imagining it. Why aren't these therapists saying like a surgeon, right? When even I'm going to do IVF, they tell you
Mhm.
all the potential things that could go wrong. Did they say that to you guys? Like when you were having your surgeries, like, hey, this could not work, this could go wrong. I mean, even any surgery you have, I mean, you have to sign away. There could be a slight chance of death. I mean,
Yeah, but also there's complications that the surgeons don't are not aware of because for me, remember, I had my complication on my leg. So my donor area on my leg, it didn't have enough nerves. And I was the first person that the doctor came into that situation with. So now after me, they do nerve mapping on the area. Like if you do your leg, they do a
oh.
nerve mapping before you get surgery. But but when I did it, I was the first one that had it. So that was just, there's complications that they don't know about still.
Alia, talk to me about where do you think therapists are? Because on your TikTok, you get a lot of people relating to your detransition, um, some not relating to it. But where do you think therapists are with it?
Yeah, so yeah, I wanted to touch on that and then I'll touch on the surgeries as well. I think for therapists, I've seen two sides, right? Like I actually interacted with two sides of it, one who wasn't going to write the letter and one who readily was. So I think it's very unique for me to have those two experiences. And so I think it depends on the area. Like Ann Arbor is a very liberal city and they're very pro everything like that. And so that's probably why it was easy for me. But then there's kids who are, in some, small little town, and have no access to that. And they do have to jump through so many hoops. So I think there are both sides of it because I've heard it, and I believe that. Um, but I think it's even though people have been transitioning for so much longer than just recently in the last 10 years, we still didn't have enough information and knowledge on long-term effects of hormones and surgeries and all of those things. So the last 10 years have really been like testing the waters and test subjects. In 2015 is when they labeled the transgender tipping point. And so it's like we were just getting into the media of this not even 10 years ago. And so I think there are I work with some people in Canada who have a like big trans health source there that are trying to educate these doctors and therapists a little bit more because I think they also feel that there there is this like lack of really enforcing that guideline. And I think there's a couple of reasons why. I think one of the biggest things is like the cancel culture has been so huge in the last 10 years where people don't want to be under fire and lose their license or their job or their facility that they're working for because they denied someone of a medication. And that is a scary thing. I mean, in so many other ways, I've seen people lose their entire business because of maybe one thing that they said or whatever it was, and someone didn't like that. And so I think that's the biggest there. They're scared to really, say how they feel because of that reason. And I think the other reason is they just aren't fully educated. They don't actually know. They're being told that these hormones or this medication is going to do A, B, and C for the patient. And so they don't look into it or they've never experienced it. And so they go, well, the doctor said that this is going to be fine and this is what happens. So I can prescribe it to you. It's like any other, like, I think we were talking about it before, and people don't like that I use this as an example, but it's so true. It's the whole thing with the epidemic with Oxy. Like everyone was like, this is like Tylenol. You can take it for anything. Prescribe
Right.
the doctors are prescribing it, doing all of these things. And it actually wasn't really good for people, and they became addicted, and a lot overdosed, they died, and it was all from the prescription of a doctor. And I'm not saying that testosterone and oxy are the same thing. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that these people are making money off of these medications, whether you like to say it or not, because they wouldn't be in their profession and they wouldn't be prescribing medication if there wasn't some benefit to them doing that. And so they're doing that, and then they're not knowing that it can affect you heavily. But like I've said before, sometimes that is worth it for some people, and that's okay as long as we just acknowledge it and we're just educated that when something does come up that maybe is feeling weird about our body, we just know how to resolve that, and we know how to talk about it and fix it. It doesn't have to be, like Gabe said, all this glam and glory about taking hormones and surgery. Like, we need to talk about if there's a complication or if something's going on, or whatever it is, but they're just not ready to. And so I feel like within the surgeries, plastic surgery and all of that, whether you want to deem trans surgeries are, needed and all of that, however you want to word it, it's still like within the plastic surgery world, and it's still within the beauty industry, and they want to make money, and like bottom surgery can go for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Are you
I
kidding me?
wonder I wondered what you
It's
both
crazy.
$400,000.
Yeah.
I
So
looked
of
on the
course they're
bill.
gonna do it. Of course they're gonna do that surgery. That's money.
$400,000.
Yeah.
So you guys are feeling within your community too, like I think the discussion's happening all the time, right? Whether people like to hear it or not, but like the vaccine, all these things, I mean, we are for profit here. I mean, they're not making
Mhm.
these drugs to not make money. I mean, Ozempic, right? Ozempic is going to be the next
Yeah.
biggest pharmaceutical. So now you see all these doctors on TikTok. Oh, well, I mean, there's some side effects, but semaglutide is amazing. And you should take, I mean, and I'm like, you guys are getting paid big fucking money to come on here and say all the fabulous benefits. And while there are some to Ozempic, a lot of people are going to have long-term consequences for
Mhm.
these. And the minute they go off them,
Mhm.
they are going to go back and gain all the weight and have mental health issues. Now they're saying Ozempic, Wegovy, these things, they have side effects for some people. They have suicidal thoughts. But of course, all these
Mhm.
doctors now on TikTok they brush over all that. So in your
Yeah.
world too, you're feeling as though there is some pharmaceutical influence of probably testosterone's there's probably big money in a lot of these drugs. Are you hearing that from other trans individuals?
I don't think
I
I'm
would.
hearing it from I'm sorry, Gabe,
Oh
but I
no,
don't think
you
I'm
go.
hearing it from other trans individuals specifically, because I don't think I think they're in their world where they're like, well, this is benefiting me and I feel good about this. So why would a doctor want to profit off that? Like, how are they? Like, I don't think they can understand that concept of it. But whether it's testosterone or estrogen or it's any, related surgery, I'll give one quick example and let Gabe speak. But there was that woman that was doing injectables for trans women, and it ended up being like stuff that you can't even put in a body. It's like stuff that you use for like a house, it's like glue, it's all of these things, and she's doing that to make that money, and that's not a doctor. But you have these trans women who can't afford some of these procedures and are going, to so and so's house to get it done, and it's for that money and that profit. So if you can believe that someone that's living in a home and is doing that out of their basement, you can believe that a doctor who's worth millions of dollars is also doing it. Like, people are people, whether you want them to have good intentions or not. But you'd be surprised how many people you think are good that are doing a lot of bad.
Yeah.
Well,
So on
go
top of
ahead.
that, I want to say something real quick. So on top of that, that is, I agree. I don't know if you know her. Her name is Raji. She's a trans woman that was on Botched. She found out that they put cement in her face. And so now she's living with the consequence of that. But that was the only way that she could get like anything done with her face. But she ended up, it was like cement or something. And so she's living with that now, years after. And she's a good friend of mine. So it's like, we talk about it. I talk about my problems. She tells me, and it's if it's easily available, there's people are gonna go after it because of all the hurdles. So how I feel is that sometimes something is very, very easy to get, but then depending where you are or who you are, it's gonna be difficult. And so you just try and look for any way to get it.
Yeah.
Especially when you're feeling that way. Like, when you feel so uncomfortable in your body and you can't look in the mirror another second at that, what's showing back at you, whether it's gender dysphoria or even body dysmorphia, which I've talked about before as well, like you will do anything to change that. And it's sad because there's so much underlying stuff. It doesn't, we're going to do what we're going to want to do, you know, like we're autonomous and we could do whatever. We have free will. But it's just like there's so many underlying factors that we should go through with our mind because, and this might get us into another subject, but it's just like in society and within culture, what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman looks so different in every place. And so what we're trying to do is kind of fit this mold, which is so harmful because if we're trying to fit this mold and we're not mentally strong enough to know like we're not going to look exactly like that mold, it's just not going to fix the issue a lot as well. And sometimes people are like, no, I understand that my body looks this way and I'm going to look a different way. I'm not going to look like a 6 foot tall man who has abs and big feet and big hands by taking testosterone. I was not someone that could understand that. I thought taking testosterone was going to make me look like this person that I will never be. And not a lot of people can grasp that concept. And I was someone that couldn't. And so I was on hormones for 7 years and I was still unhappy because I wasn't happy with my body to begin with. And that was a completely different way. Like if I looked like Gabe where I had abs and more muscles, I probably would have been okay, but I didn't have that body type. Like I had the beard, I had the masculinity, but I had wider hips. Like I had these things that I could not change. And so I think like that was something that was hard for me to continue in my transition as well. But like I said, if I had muscles like Gabe, it would have been a whole nother ball game. And I know that that sounds funny, but it's so true for me.
Talk to us, both of you, about your transition. So, Gabe, when you came on my show the first time, you said for the most part, people supported you. You know, we're supportive. You transitioned. You've done the surgeries, and people in your life, your sister, your mom, your friends, have been supportive. Alia, I'm wondering, were people initially supportive, like of you transitioning, and then how did they feel when you announced you were going to detransition?
So when I decided I was going to transition, I even when I came out as gay, like I lost friends from high school and stuff like that. Like I was just different, right? I was going in a different path than these people. And so there were some that definitely stayed by my side. And then I gained a lot more friendships being at Eastern Michigan and all of that. So my friendships just changed. My family, my mother was going through her own thing. We weren't even like speaking at this time. She was having like a lot of mental health issues, just all of that. But my grandmother, she didn't understand what was going on, but she was still so supportive. She like bought me my first binder. She was like, I'm not going to call you this name, but I'll buy you your binder. You know what I mean? Like she just, couldn't get it. And then as soon as I went to my first appointment and the doctor referred to me as he, it clicked for her. She understood after that. So it was fairly easy. And then I was just like, I mean, I was doing the documentary. I was like so supported. Like, I mean, everyone was like, you're so brave, like all this, like even people that I had not spoken to in so long were like reaching out to me and, all of these things, wanting to talk to me, like all of that. Now, when I decided to detransition, I did lose some trans male friends. Some people unfollowed me that I was like, oh, I thought we were like cool with each other, like things like that I was really surprised and like a little hurt by. And then the people in my real life, not like internet life, like I feel like they started to either like treat me how they did free everything, like when I was a girl in high school. And I don't know why, but something in me feels like they were like, maybe they thought it was for attention or whatever, like, oh, here she goes again doing this. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't the same treatment when I turned into a man, and even with the women around me. And I like girls can be mean to girls, but like girls were not mean to me as a guy. And so that whole dynamic was completely different. It was like I was being treated like a woman again by other women and men. And it was so weird to me because I was like, I'm the same person. So some people talked to me more that didn't talk to me as a trans man. They were like shunning me from like female spaces. And as soon as I detransitioned, they were like, hey, how's it going? How are you? Like, I hope everything's going well. And it was like I'm like, you were just not talking to me 6 months ago. You like don't even have me on Instagram and now we're friends. Like I'm confused. So it's like that's how that went for me. And then because the only people that were detransitioning during that time were the ones who were so anti-trans, it was like as soon as I said it, that's probably why people were like, nope, we're not talking to her. We're not gonna mess with this, because they probably thought I was gonna do that. But I was just kind of like, you guys have known me for 7 years. Like, you know who I am, you know what I stand for. So like, why would you automatically put me in that box? You know? And
Yeah.
my family was like, when I decided, I remember I sat, I mean, so imagine I look like Gabe, okay? And I sit down with my grandmother and my mother and I go, I'm gonna detransition. I mean, they're looking at me like, how do you even start and what the hell is gonna happen? Because look at you. Like, how are you going to be this girl again that you like once looked like? And I just looked at them and was like, I have no idea, but like, I'm gonna do it. And if
You
anyone's gonna do it, like, it's gonna be me.
you had top surgery, right? You
Yes,
had your
yes.
breast removed. Okay.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so they must have had a lot of, yeah, questions.
I think they were nervous to how that journey was going to go for me. But if anyone close to me knows, like, if I really want something and I need to make something happen, I'm going to go for it 100% and I'm going to be successful at it. And that's why I think even my 7 years on testosterone, like I was so hyper, which is what I wanted, but I was so hyper masculine looking. I had the full beard, like I had the whole, look, that like the superficial part of it and stuff like that, and even the internal, all of it. But it was just like, I'm gonna go for this. And so they knew that I was gonna do anything that I could to just at least try. And I was extremely fortunate, like, because I did have my double mastectomy. And what made that a little bit easier is that there were women in my family that also had double mastectomies due to breast cancer, and they were like immediate family members. And so seeing a woman without breasts was not abnormal to me. And so that wasn't as hard to get through, but I knew that I wanted them again. But like everything else, like, yeah, I could not continue my life as a trans man. And I will say that is not like as morbidly as, but like, if I couldn't have come back to this, I don't think that I would have continued my life, because that's how scary that, I'm sure Gabe can relate to this, that there was a moment before his transition where he was like I am in like the wrong body in a sense. Like I cannot, like, oh my God, I can't live another day like this. And I didn't feel that until I decided to detransition. That's when I really understood that statement of being in the wrong body. And I was
Wow.
like, whoa, like I have like, and not even to like, but that's really how I felt. Like, I mean, I've never cried so much and was so depressed and was so scared about my future, like in that moment. And I did not feel that intensity until wanting to detransition. I didn't feel it. Like I felt it in little waves, before my transition, but not like when I wanted to detransition.
And were you in therapy when you were detransitioning to get you through? That's a lot. That's
I
a lot.
was not. I was not. I was doing like my own version of therapy, and that was microdosing mushrooms for me. And I just like got really something something weird just happened in the pandemic for me. Like, and I can't explain it. Like I just felt like it was very, I'll just say it was very spiritual, and not in the like God was speaking. Like it just felt like I was so in tune with my soul and spirit that like I just like I maybe I was dissociated, like I don't know, but I just felt like I jolted back in my body and my brain was now fully developed. And I was just like, the
And what?
thoughts that I it
How
was
old?
just weird.
Yeah. How old were
It
you
was just
when that
weird.
when you detransitioned?
So
Mm.
it was in 2020, it was 4 years ago. I was like 25, 26. And that's when your brain fully develops. And it was just like something clicked for me in that moment. And I speak about it in my YouTube, and I'll go real short into it, but it was really like I literally was sitting there and I was staring at myself in the mirror while I was literally going pee on the toilet. Like the mirror was like that. And it's one summer morning, the pandemic, I've been by myself. I'm in this month-long depressive episode where I'm literally just feeding myself junk food and sleeping for 30 days straight. Like I'm so depressed. I look in the mirror and this thought comes into my mind, and it says like, what if I dissociated so much that I created the identity Issa? Don't ask me where that thought came from. I wasn't thinking anything about my gender identity. I didn't even know what the word dissociated meant. I literally had to go onto Google on my phone and be like, what does dissociate mean?
Hmm.
And I was like, I had this wave of like, just like, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. But like, where did that thought come from? How did that word come into my mind? And I had no idea what it meant. That's what I mean by like some spiritual weirdness, because I was like, that is just weird. You know what I mean? Like, and I just listened to that thought. And when I listened to it and I started like, researching and stuff like that, I knew that that was what I needed to do. But it was just like, it was weird. It was very, that's the only way I can explain it, is that it was weird.
Gabe, what about for you? You talked about in your early 20s when you transitioned, everyone was pretty supportive. And I think you even said on the show the first time you came on that when you came out as a lesbian, people were very, everybody was supportive. Now you are, you're trans, you're a man. How are people still now? Has anything changed for you?
Um, I would say that people that were on the fence about me are now, they're just like, oh, okay, Gabe is Gabe. He's not gonna, he's not that other person anymore. Because I've had family members where they would call me, because so my first name was Natalie. And I had a cousin and she was like, oh yeah, well, that's still Natalie to me. And my other cousin, like, that's Gabe. He has a full beard. Why do you keep calling him a girl? But now the same person is like, oh, hey Gabe. I'm like, oh yeah. So it's like, I feel like, because I've been well, I, I was like 22, so it's been like almost 13 years now. And so I think people that were unsure about me now, they're just like, oh, okay, Gabe is just Gabe. It's whether they like me or not, they acknowledge me as Gabe, you know. Because how crazy do they look if they're like talking to me and saying she?
Do you feel though supported in society and I'm assuming you have a whole different experience than Alia. You feel you are who you are.
Yeah. Well, so I feel that in life, you go through stepping stones. It's like this, I thought I was this and now I'm not, like career path. I thought I was doing this, I was invested in it. Okay, but you know what? My mind changed, my thoughts changed, and this is not me anymore. This is, I'm somebody else. But it's not somebody else, but everybody evolves. So that's how I feel like the transitioning is. It's like I evolved to trans man, and then if I felt like I wasn't trans anymore, or I felt like that stage of my life is done, then you evolve into your new self. But I went on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No, this is great. I think because you guys, I think what's so interesting about you and we don't see enough is you two have similarities, but you're different, and yet you both support one another.
Yeah.
And I don't think you see that a lot. Um, for all of us trying to, I think, figure out, how to be supportive of our trans coworkers and friends. It's very confusing because online it's very black or white. It's either, to me, it's presented like these therapists and now schools are forcing, are pushing this gender ideology on kids that may or may not need it. Then in society you have you feel like sometimes maybe the trans community is pushing back. To your point, like if you mess up and you say someone's wrong pronoun,
No,
are you
yeah.
going to be it's like
Especially,
then I think a lot of people like myself kind of step back and are almost, it's sad, like I feel like they don't want to interact with trans people because, to what you guys said, it's like, well, I don't want to be canceled if I say something wrong, or I don't want my business to be attacked. So I think
well, even sometimes
unfortunately,
it's hard to be an ally,
yeah.
because I know that like at some meetings that I would go to, they're like, oh, well, they're an ally, but are you really an ally if you don't speak up at everything? If you don't see this, are you really an ally? But it's like, people can be an ally to like a certain degree. It's like, I don't have to jump down everybody's throat. Like, I don't know how to put it. So I was in a meeting one time,
And wait,
and
what is this meeting? What is it? Is
it
this
was a
like,
LGBT meeting.
okay?
It was more like a trans, like a transgender queer meeting, right? And we had a couple allies, and this one guy, he was always very combative all the time. He's like, well, you're not an ally if when you see something against trans people, you don't speak up. You're not with us. You're against us. Like, it's like, how, what is the line that you can be an ally? Like, what's the fine line? How much do you have to support us to be an ally? Which I think, this person is at our trans meetings. I think they're an ally, they, but it's, I don't know. For
It's confusing for all of us.
sometimes it's sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to support a certain group, because even me, I know that, when people are so into their, don't call me this, I'm this and this, and oh, well, you said I'm trans, but I'm really this and this, but it's, sometimes it's hard to speak to a certain group of people, because everything you say, they're going to take it to heart, and they're going to shove it down your throat. Like, well, you said this, but it's not, like, that's not what I intended to say,
Right.
So I feel like a lot of people don't really support the trans community because they think that we're always combative, which even me, I see it all the time.
You have to
It's like,
it's
you
like,
want
is the
support, but
intent malicious?
you have to support us in the way that we want to be supported.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
like
here with a lot of movements now,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And it's like, yeah, people don't, to your point, people want to show up, I think, for the most part and help. But then if they get chastised one time, then they're like, retreat, retreat. They don't,
Yeah.
it's very confusing, I think, for a lot of groups.
Yeah.
Alia, what did you want to say? Then I want to ask you too about how you guys, I think it's very brave that you both support one another, because you get a lot of positive comments. I don't want to, you get a lot of support, both of you, on your YouTubes and on your TikTok, but you also get, like, you guys get the veiled threats. And I'm like, fuck these people. But anyhow, Alia, jump in, and then I want to ask you guys how you support one another.
Yeah, like, it was just what I was just gonna add is like, is the person being malicious? Like, if someone went up to Gabe and used she and her pronouns, they're being malicious. If someone went up to Gabe and said they, them, I think they're just like trying to generalize a pronoun to make sure, you know what I mean? If they know that Gabe is in the queer community, like, I think there's that. And then sometimes, like, allies, like, whether they're like our close friends, whatever, they'll try and like fight a battle for us. And sometimes it's like, we don't really want that, because like, it's pick and choose. Like, it's not that, for me, it's not that serious. Like, if someone came up to me and said he, him, I'd be like, come on now. Like, come on, But if they say they, them, like, I'm just like, okay, well, I use she, her, or, whatever the case may be. But it's just really not that serious until someone is like saying something really malicious and like, disrespectful to you. It's like, who cares? And there are so many pronouns and there are so many terms. And so like, then how are we supposed to know all of them? And I think, just to end that, is that what I try to do is see whoever is being that way, how old are they? Because if they're under 20 years old, I don't even go into the conversation, because it's just that generation right now is so like, rigid on everything. And if you're not like this, then you're this, and stuff like that. And they just don't understand the complexity of gender and sexuality and being an adult. When you're a teen, early 20s, you're just in that world. So I don't even like listen, at that point. If it's someone who's, even just a couple years younger, I mean, still, that's a different story. But usually it's like 16-year-olds, 19-year-olds who are like on my page doing that.
Yeah, that have
And
these
you
veiled
just can't talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't talk to them, because we all know how we were at that age. We knew everything at that age. So it's just like, you got to just wait, wait it out.
All right. Tell me why it was important for you guys. You did this YouTube collab together. You're very supportive of one another, which I think is very brave, because to your points, right? In all kinds of movements, it's like, these are the rules. And oh my God, if you have a conversation or you deviate from that, people have a lot to say. Why did you guys feel it was important to have a conversation as a trans man, as someone who detransitioned, to be supportive and hear each other out?
So I got a comment recently, before um our YouTube collab, and it was somebody asked me about detransitioning or something. And I'm like, wow. I and at the time, I was not on my hormones for a while, and I'm like, I feel so weird. I just feel weird right now. And so when I got the comment from that person, I'm like, wow, I really want to speak to somebody that is detransitioning or detransition, because nobody is speaking about that. We don't know any information at all. So that's why I reached out to her, and I felt like we did this video because I feel like there's a lot of people, transgender people, stuck being transgender because they're scared to detransition. They're afraid of what people are going to say, or that they're the only person that thinks that, oh no, I don't want to say a mistake, but maybe they're like, oh, this is a mistake. This is not me. But they're just going to stick with it just so they're not chastised, or just so it's people are not saying, oh, they're you are fake. I already knew that you weren't trans, when it's not like that. It's just like, you at this particular point, you thought that you were this person, but really, you experienced it. Without that experience, you would have never known, you know. And so I feel like that was very important, just to get the message out there that it is okay to detransition. It is okay to, live your life one way, and then, all right, this is not for me. I tried it out, but at least you tried it out, you knew, and now, you evolve yourself into the next phase of your life. So I thought that that was very important to put that out there, that it is okay.
Alia, what about for you? Why was it important to do the conversation with Gabe, and even to go bold on your your TikTok? Your TikTok shows your entire detransition, regardless of what people have to say.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm getting emotional right now, but like for me, I had so many trans male friends, and those were like I was so close to them. And so like I feel like denouncing that friendship and that acknowledgement of trans men would be like denouncing myself, because that's who I was. And so just because I changed my mind, or decided this wasn't the path for me or whatever, like what am I not going to accept or befriend someone that like identifies how I used to identify? And so I think like what's making me emotional is that like I did lose friends that identified as trans men, and I did feel like that connection was like getting lost in it and stuff. And so when like Gabe reached out to me, and a guy Sam Collins reached out to me and stuff like that, I was like, yeah, I want to talk to these guys, because like even though I don't identify like in that anymore, I still feel like what Gabe is feeling. You know what I mean? Like even though I look different and stuff. And so I think it was like important to have that conversation and talk about it, because like that that's still me, even though it's a previous version of me. And so and then there wasn't really anyone that was, like, and Gabe is a nice guy. Like, why would I not, like, just because he is different, it's like he's different than me. So I should not like him because he's different than me, or I should be against him. And that's like with anything, right? Like race, gender, sexuality, all of that. So it doesn't make sense to me why there is this like line between us just because we're in different paths. And so I think like that's why I was so open with Gabe and many other trans men that wanted to have conversations with me.
Absolutely. I
I
mean,
felt I want to say that I felt the same way in the beginning of my transition, because even like to now, because so I identified as lesbian, but then when I started transitioning, I was losing all my lesbian friends. They were like, oh, like just kicking me to the side. And I'm like, dang, this sucks. But then like even the clubs that I would go to would be, oh, lesbian night, but I would still show up. But now I look like this. People are like, why are you even here? It's like, this is my community for since I was like 16 years old. So it's like now I really don't go to like any lesbian places anymore. If anything, I'm like, a gender neutral space or whatever, because now, well, people know me because TV, but if they don't, they're like, oh, why is this guy in here? Oh, he likes women. So it's like, on top of that, me liking women and then me looking like this, I'm definitely not welcome in any lesbian space at all. But it's like, that was half of my life. That was me. So it's like, do have to get you do have to be comfortable with not being accepted in a space where you literally grew up in.
Yeah.
damn. I mean, you two
Yeah.
are like super fucking brave, because on top of like, you know, hormones and all. I mean, you guys,
Yeah.
I'm just in awe of both of you because you put it out there and you don't give a shit and you guys respond to the good comments, the bad comments, and it has to be extra hurtful within your own community, and I know we all find that because even in different aspects, a job, right? Or sometimes it's even as simple as like you don't have kids, you have all these friends that don't have children, you decide to have a kid, and then suddenly, you don't have things in common with the people you thought you had in common with for a decade. It's very difficult. You guys, you work in it every day. Now we are inundated all the time about children transitioning and what is the right thing to do. Should we be supportive? Should we have these kids on hormones? Should we not? Is there a pharmaceutical agenda to have them have surgeries? You guys work in this space and I'm sure hear from parents. If you two were hypothetically running things, what do you think is the right protocol, or what's your opinion on children and transitioning?
You want to go first? You can go first.
Yeah, I can. So I wasn't a child that transitioned, but I was a child that was very, we could say gender fluid. I was a huge tomboy. I mean, I wore boys' clothes, hung out with the boys. In my head, sometimes I played dad, brother, boyfriend, like in house. Like I always wanted to be around boy stuff. I was allowed with that with my grandparents, but my mother was young. She was 19 when she had me, so she was very impressionable. And so people around her, especially my father's side of the family, would always be like, she needs to wear girls' clothes. She needs to do this. She needs to do that. And I felt this immense pressure as a kid that I was always upsetting my mother. And I didn't want to do that. And so like I had to wear a dress for something. And I'm like, I don't want to wear this dress. So there was like so many moments that I was just like not being allowed to just be me, just a kid, And I feel like when I think of those moments, I'm like, I just wanted to wear the clothes that I wanted to wear. I didn't look at it like that was like I wanted to be a boy, or like I was just like, I'm Alia and I want to wear this baggy t-shirt and these cargo shorts. You know what I mean? Like, and I want those cool blue Nike shoes. Like, and I want to play hockey with my friends and, and all these things. And I feel like because of all of the adults around me, they pressured me on that. Like, because kids don't really, if if someone is seeing like another kid being even just treated a different way, you have a brother and the brother's able to get away with so much more than the sister is, or whatever the case would be, it doesn't always have to be so complex of the, you know, okay, well, she wants to be a boy because of it. It's like, no, I think she just wants to be treated how her brother is being treated, or, or her friend in class, or whatever the case may be. At that age, we can't even comprehend the complexity of gender and sexuality because we're children. And so when it comes to hormones, like I think exploring your gender, like within clothes, sport, like, whatever like society deems that's very gender, let them do whatever they want, 100%. They want to be called a nickname, 100%. Like that's totally okay. When it comes to the medical aspect of it, the only issue that I see is sometimes these doctors, medical professionals, therapists want to get these young teens, because usually like I see it's around like probably 12, 13 years old, preteens, right, on hormones, because it's going to make their transition easier. And the way that makes their transition easier is all of the physical characteristics. So you have a child or a preteen that is very uncomfortable in their body. Let's give this as just like a general example, but you have someone who's born male, they want to be female, and they want to transition them at a young age. What are the reasons why we would want to transition someone at that young of an age who hasn't mentally developed and all of that? Is because women are soft, right? Their voices are light, they're shorter, they have a petite frame, they have like softer skin. There's all of these attributes that we deem what is to be a woman physically, okay? If that young trans girl doesn't go on hormones until later, she goes through her puberty. She's now taller, she's got rigid features, she's developing facial hair, she's got broader shoulders, big hands, big feet, all these different things, right? So when she goes to transition later on in life, it can be deemed difficult because she's not going to have those soft features like a woman. But now let's think about how harmful that is within the beauty industry and society as a whole, because not all women, whether they're born women or not, are soft, tiny, petite, like soft boys, all these things. Women look so different. And
It's so true.
it
Men do,
further
yeah.
makes your right. It further makes your mental health even worse, because even if that trans girl is transitioning at a young age and going through that, it's all about genetics. Like her mother could be tall, like all these different things. So if she doesn't fit that rigid stereotype that she sees her girlfriend looking like, or whatever it is, her mental health is just going to be absolutely even worse, unless she can get over the fact that that is her body, and she will just look how her body is. So if she can accept that as a trans girl who's transitioning, like it's okay to be a tall trans girl. It's okay to have broader shoulders as a trans girl. Like those are all okay things, but it's so rigid that it's not when you're young, that it just makes it a lot worse as you get older. So that's where, and then, everything that I just said about young trans women, think about young trans men. They want to be tall, all those things. And if their body just doesn't do that, they're going to be disappointed. And I was someone who was disappointed. And so that's how I view it. But at the same time, everyone's going to do what they're going to do. But I just think that, like, having that base education on human bodies and how they look and how everyone is different no matter what gender you are, because there are men that are born male that are short
Oh God,
and curvier and all of these things, right?
yeah.
And so, like, once we realize that that's okay, then I think even with transitioning and all that, it won't be as like everyone is doing it, right? Because we're going to start to understand, like, okay, well, maybe it's okay that I am a woman who is more masculine and likes to wear these certain things and likes women or whatever it is. I don't have to be in this lesbian, identity. I don't have to be in these certain identities. I'm just me, and I'm wearing what I want to wear, and I'm looking how I want to look. And if I go on hormones, it's because I want to. And usually hormones are because you want to. So I don't want that to get twisted. But if you can understand where my mind is going with it, it's not this pressure that, like, you have to look this certain way to fit into this box of an identity. So that's
Yeah.
largely in my view of it.
No, I think that sounds very reasonable. And Gabe, what about for you? What's your thoughts on how we see it in the media all the time that, if a young person wants to transition and they're 10, they should be allowed to. I mean, where are you with that? It's a complicated one. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
No, it is complicated, because I agree, if you do start transitioning sooner, you will ease into the role that you want to be in a lot easier. Because let's say I started transitioning when I was, 12, 13. I would have got like 2 more inches. My dad is only like 5'3". So, there was not really
Yeah,
much
you weren't
room for me to grow. But I would have got those 3 inches. But all in all, I think that it does, starting the earlier the better, of course. However, your mind is changing so much when you're smaller. And I maybe I believe in hormone blockers, but I don't think that if you are under 18 that you should be able to get, hormones, because I feel like it's just, when we're younger, we think we're so many things. We go through phases every other week. We just don't know. I don't think a child has the capability to know that they're truly trans from such a young age. I think that delaying puberty is better than trying to transition them altogether. However, if it's a girl, she wants to be, a boy, yeah, let her wear these clothes that she wants to wear, give her the name that she wants to give, but don't give her testosterone. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think. I think blocking puberty is a lot better, because you can delay, and maybe, when they're 17, 18, they're like, you know what? I'm glad I didn't transition. I'm glad I didn't this, because they still have, it's like this gray area. Like a hormone blocker is like this gray area. You're not women, male, you're just like in this gray area that is postponing the decision for later. And I think that that's a lot better, so they can truly know if they are really trans or not.
Yeah. Well,
I do want to ask something, if that's okay, just since we're on this subject too, is because I'm not extremely knowledgeable on blockers, But what I can imagine is that's also has a side effect as well, right? And in delaying a puberty. So it's like, even with that, you have to be very careful as well, because you know what I mean? You're taking something to prolong this moment that shouldn't be prolonged, right? So then how does that affect you as well with other things too? So I mean, I just think I'm like, that's a hard one too to say, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, like let's save it, but then okay, well, what's happening in that span of the 6 years of you not developing your hormones? What's happening to your body? You
Yeah.
know,
With
so
growth and
that's
everything like that. Yeah.
yes, all of
Mhm.
that. So
Yeah.
that's another hard one too.
Yeah. And we don't
Um,
know really the real consequences of it. I feel like it's very, very new. It's not
Mhm.
very new, but it's, it's getting more common. But I
yeah.
think, I don't know. I think if your kid says they're transgender, I think that the most I would do is hormone blockers, but I wouldn't go any further than that.
Well, because the what we're hearing, and you guys are so brave in your stories, but if someone does decide to detransition, and Alia, maybe you can speak more to this, but we are hearing that there is some irreversible damage sometimes where, or if you've had a hysterectomy and then you decide this isn't who you are. I mean, you're never having a child. You know what I mean? There can be some big, and even Alia, I was curious, one of the things you read a lot about is for born women that transition to men and then detransition, like your voice never goes back because you spent years. I mean, did everything? I think you sound very feminine. I'm not sure if you're happy with your voice or not, but I mean, did you feel like everything went back, or do you find that people that reach out to you that detransition a lot of times have irreversible damage?
I think for myself, I got, I was very fortunate. My voice has lightened, but it isn't what it used to be. But I feel happy with that because for me, I felt like my voice was so soft pre-transition. Like I felt like I sounded like a baby. And in my documentary, like the first clips, you'll hear my voice and you're like, oh my God, that's like a very young voice. So for me with my voice, like I said, it's lightened since then. I don't know if it's going to continue to change. Um, I get that I sound like Miley Cyrus a lot, and so I'm like, I'll
Oh,
take that as a compliment, you know? And I think it's just because my voice is a little bit deeper. It's got that like tang raspiness to it that's similar to hers. So I get I'll get the people online, which are usually young guys, and they're like, "Oh my God, you sound like a man," or whatever the case would be. And I think most of the time they think that I'm a trans woman. I don't think that they understand that I've detransitioned, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think when they see it online, they get so confused, and then they want to say something that they think is hurtful. But I'm like, I don't give a shit about that. But then I get so many comments that they're like, I love your voice. And it's even like men that I'm romantically interested in. They're like, I love it, you know? So it really just depends on the person. So that went on a tangent. But I was able to, I mean, you see how long my hair is, you know what I mean? Like I
yeah.
grew my hair out. My features have softened tremendously. I look just like a 10-year, like older version than my 17-year-old self pre-transition. Um, my curves came back, my hair thinned out, but I also got electrolysis and laser. Um, I was very fortunate. I didn't get a hysterectomy. As far as like fertility stuff, I have my menstrual cycle every month on time. It's always regular. I've had my levels checked. They're pretty normal for my age. I would say like maybe they're a little bit lower at some times of the month, but I think there's so many other things that could affect that as well because there's a lot of women that are my age that are dealing with hormonal issues in general because of food and just the chemicals and everything that we have. So there's that. I haven't checked just yet to see if I could carry a child, but I don't know if I want to do that because of my body dysmorphia. I don't know if that's something that I could handle mentally, but I love children. So those are things that I'm still trying to figure out. As far as other people, you're right. They've had a hysterectomy, they've had bottom surgery. Like I know someone that's had everything done and she has to accept that life that she has. She can't go back. She can't go back in the ways that I was able to. But I even think that her being off of like testosterone, things that like I'm like, if I saw you, I would think that you were a woman if that's how you want to be perceived. And I think she's lucky in that sense. But I think there's other things that like caused her to be like severely depressed because yeah, once you do those things, there are some things you cannot. And saying irreversible damage is a harsh word, you know? Like I think just knowing that there are some things that they did that are irreversible, but we do stuff like that to our body in so many ways, regardless of our gender and sexuality, right? That like we just
Drinking,
can't change it.
drugs,
Yeah, the
like
tattoos, the piercings, the you know, implants,
personally,
the
I feel like
yeah,
Ozempic will be one. You know, people will be on
yeah,
that for years. It will not work. You don't
mhm,
know what the long-term consequences are if you're using it and
yeah,
you're not a diabetic, which a lot of people are now. I mean, people, to your point, yes, people do damaging things to their body, and I know what you mean. It's harsh to say like pay the price, but they, you know, yeah, they have the yeah, we all make decisions at all ages, regardless
mhm,
of gender, of things you put in your body or do to your body that could have long-term consequences. Yeah.
yeah. But when you're seeking out advice and guidance from a medical professional because you're not a doctor and you're trying to do this, I can see where the severe hurt and anger and frustration and depression comes from because you came to this individual and you were like, these are my issues and you have a license for this and I need your help. And then them not given all of the information on things and yeah, like once you get a hysterectomy, that's it. You know what I mean? Like you will have to be because you're young, you will have to be on hormones for the rest of your life, no matter if it's testosterone or estrogen. You have to have something. And it's just like things like that, that like I can understand why people, I don't agree with it, but I can understand why there are people who are like, do not allow people to do this. I can see where that anger and hurt comes from. Um, but at the same time, like I can't go to Gabe and be like, you shouldn't be living the life that you're living because
Right.
some things are worth it for people. Like that's what I think we fail to understand is that like when you are so severe in that mental or physical state, you're like, this is the only option I have to live a very happy and successful life. And so I think that's where that difference is too for it.
I'm curious too what you guys think. You know, the perception I think in the mainstream media too is a lot of times, and Alia, you and I talked about this a little offline. Gabe, I'm curious what you think, but there's this also this thought that now parents, um, because we are sort of in this, I guess, parenting, and I'm sort of guilty of this like helicopter parenting and overly supportive. And so now there's almost a perception that parents are like, get the hormone, are super supportive. They don't want to like push back against their children. And a lot of people have very strong feelings of how harmful that is to kids. Do you guys see that? Do you guys have a lot of parents that reach out to you and they are like, yes, I'm just going to do this? Do you think that's true? Because there's
Mhm,
that perception. And I don't know if you know the author Abigail Schreier. She wrote a book on gender, and she says that that a lot of trans children now are upper middle or like wealthy white kids that are doing this for a period of time. The parents are like all about it, and then detransitioning. This is her research. Do you guys see this? Do you think the parents play a big role?
I think the parents play a big role in support. So if the kid thinks that they're transgender and the parents like, okay, yeah, well, you know what? I think you are too, but this is the first time they're probably even experiencing this, that anything with anything transgender related, this is the first time that the parent is hearing about this. So they're just going online also and doing their, research, but I think that they just want to be supportive, and when you give your kid that support, it kind of confirms like, oh yeah, I'm right because my mom says that, I'm right about this and I feel this. So I think that there's a lot of support coming from the parents, but it's because the parents don't know really what they're supporting. They don't know the gravity of the situation that's happening. I think that before we're able to transition, there should be like a course, like a transitioning course that goes through, what will happen to your body, what can happen to your body, what happens if you detransition. I think that there should be some material that we need to read or a video we need to watch that outlines every possibility. And I think that the parents also, because a lot of these parents, they're like, oh yeah, my kid is trans, they're trans, blah, blah. Let's go to gay pride. Let's do this. Yeah, I support them. But then they don't think of oh, but what if in 1 year my kid decides that they're not? Now what? Now what do I have to do? What if, he has surgery and regrets it? Now what do I do? Because you went from supporting your kid and now you're like, okay, well, I support you in this, but then they're just on
Yeah.
this big supportive thing and they're just supporting whatever the kid wants to do. But at the same point, you're their parent and you have to be like, hey, maybe you should think about this. Maybe you should slow down a little bit. So I think when parents are overly supportive, it kind of it's not that supportive to the child.
Yeah. Well, to your point, yeah, that's one of the points in Abigail's research is that when kids transition now, there's a big celebration, and a lot of support. But then when they detransition, and Alia touched on this a little, is sometimes the support isn't there. Like people don't know how to support you if you detransition, and it's almost like, oh, well, wait a minute, we threw you this great party, and now what? So. Alia, what do you hear? Do you get a lot of parents reaching out to you? And how do you think they can help best support their child without being too extreme either way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a parent, so I don't have a child. Like I can understand, but I can't relate to having a child. I was a stubborn, independent child. So like it's very hard to parent someone who like has what they want to do and whatever at whatever age. 16, I got my car, I was out of the house. You couldn't tell me anything. So it is very difficult to navigate big situations, relationships, gender, sexualities like with a child. That's very hard. And you're trying to do the best that you can, and you do want to be supportive of your child, but you also want to keep them from harm. And so it's hard to find that balance, and it's different for every parent. So I want to just like have that as like that general statement, like it's hard to criticize what parents are doing because like it is very difficult to parent a child. It's not an easy job. With that, I think like just back to when I said like what I think like children and preteens and stuff like that should be doing is just like exploring like um socially, allowing that. But when Gabe was speaking, it reminded me of this documentary on trans children that I watched, and I cannot think of the name of it, but it was a couple of kids and it was with their parents. And I think I was still in my transition when I watched this, but I remember just being like, oh my God, how harmful was this moment between this parent and this child? And the mother's having a conversation with her trans son, and she says to him, well, you better be sure about this because we did all of this and we've been doing all of this to keep this going and stuff like that. And I can imagine that trans son being like, oh my God, if I change my mind, my mom is going to be so mad. And not giving him that outlet of like, if you change your mind, that's okay. And we'll figure it out together. Like, I just remember seeing that moment and being like, this is so harmful right now for this poor kid. Because like, I could totally foresee some parents being like, I just did all of this stuff for you to get you to this moment, and now you want to go back. And I think that's why it is really difficult to make such a definitive decision for your child of like, okay, you're 5, 6, 7 years old and you're like, I want to play this sport. I want to look like this. I want to be called Alex. I want, like all of these different things. And then they're 12 years old and they're like, no, I want to wear makeup now and I want to do this. And then the parent getting mad. Like, that's not what having, like, you can't have a child and have them fit your mold of who they're supposed to be. Like, that's not what you have children for. They're their own person. They're going to do what they want to do all the time. So all you can do is best help them make the decision, help them understand that if their mind changes, it's okay. And that making other decisions, like giving them another decision to make. So not like, oh, hormones are nothing. Well, what if we buy you these clothes? What if you are surrounded by more people who are this gender? Or, what if we call you this instead? And let's wait a little bit. It's like when you're, and this is so stupid, but like when I was 12, I wanted a go-kart, like so bad. Like I wanted a go-kart. And my grandfather kept telling me, in 4 years, you're going to have your own car. If I buy you a go-kart now from your savings, we're not going to be able to buy you a car when you're 16,
Yes.
And I just had to be patient and I had to wait. And I realize now I wanted that car more than I wanted that go-kart. And
I
so
know.
even though that's such a small and so random, I don't want someone to get mad, like, how could you compare this to a car? But it's just that concept of like, we don't see what's ahead of us. We just see what's right now in that moment. And as kids, we're always seeing what's right now in that moment. We don't see us at 20. We don't see us at 30, like all of that. So I guess like that's the only way I can get like maybe someone to understand where my mind is at with it,
Yeah.
with
No, I
parents and
think
kids. Yeah.
that was a really both of you.
Going back to what you said about that documentary, I think that's why a lot of people who are trans are afraid to detransition, because it's like, you're this way, okay, now we've done all of this, we've accepted who you are, and now they're just afraid that they are stuck in this, and that's it.
I was
Yeah.
When
trying to look up the
it's
name of
not,
that.
you don't have to be stuck,
Yeah. I mean,
if
call
you
me
don't feel like you're
selfish,
this
but
anymore, go back,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
for the sake of your mental health, for the sake of you, it's going to be a lot better. When people, they're going to be mad for a certain amount of time, they'll get over it. Make yourself happy.
Mhm.
You
I
guys,
didn't even think about that. Like, I was just like, I'm going back. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, you can't, like, I'm going back. And I don't care if I literally asked myself this question, and I think this helped me a lot, was if I was the only person on earth right now, because it was the pandemic, I didn't have no friends, no one. I said, so if I didn't ever interact with anyone else again in my life, how would I want to present myself? And that's when I knew I was like, I want to be a woman again. Like I didn't care what my friends, family, I didn't care what any of them thought or said. I don't care that I took my grandma to Plano, Texas to go get top surgery and have her cook me meals and take care of me that week. I love my grandma, but I was like, I have to go back. Like, I don't care if you're mad at me for that. I have to. And so you have to have that level of selfishness when it comes to that, when you're worrying about what everyone else is thinking.
Yeah. I always tell people,
Love that about you too.
if you feel like you need a transition, do it. If you feel like you need to detransition, do it, because at the end of the day, they're not in your skin.
Mm-hmm.
If do what makes yourself feel comfortable, what is good on your mental, just whatever makes yourself feel good, do it. Because at the end of the day, you want to listen to what haters or what anybody else says. They're not in your skin. At the end of the day, they're going to have a conversation with you, they're going to leave, and they're going to live their life. Meanwhile, you're still stuck in this form just because of what somebody else says. At the end of the day, you are in your skin, they are not in your skin. They don't know what it feels like, they don't know what you do, they don't know how you think, they don't know anything. Because a lot of people, they talk smack about me, and guess what? Oh, you mutilated your body, you're this, you're that. Oh, you know what? So should I just go back? No, you're not in my skin, you don't know how I feel. I'm like, you're gonna say a mean comment, and then you're gonna go away forever, and that's fine. I'm like,
I know, and half
Mm-hmm.
of them don't even have a real profile picture, so it's like,
exactly, they don't even
oh,
have profile
Right.
pictures and
um,
zero photos.
last question, and then you guys have to give out your info where people can find you and reach out for more info. But does it bother you guys? Because I've obviously been researching both of you, your social medias. It's so fascinating to me. Does it irritate you when you guys had the conversation about like this, that it gets far fewer views than when you guys do topics of like Gabe, I think one of your most viewed is discussing bottom surgery. But it's interesting to me. Do you guys get irritated with the algorithms that seem to
I hate it
never
actually, because
prioritize the
all
in
right,
between
so
combo?
I posted a video of me wearing a dog shock collar and like shocking myself, right? Thousands of views. Ours, not so many. I'm like, this is such great. This is like this is learning. You would learn so much more from this conversation than me wearing a shock collar and shocking the shit out of myself. But it's like, whatever is bright lights and look at this, look at this, that's what they're gonna flock to. But then if it's something educational, that they can actually learn about something, then but at the same time, not a lot of people care, because they're like, oh, look at these freaks, so they don't know what they're talking about. People, that video is going to be invisible. So I think I'm just like, this is so crazy.
I agree. I'm like, oh my God, this conversation is so, to me, if people had this conversation that the three of us are having now, there would be far less trans hate. There'd be far less trans, confusion, because this is so rational. It's like, do what's best for you, be supportive. There are going to be people that like you and don't like you, regardless of who you are. But yet I guarantee this will be like low views. It's just, it's so weird to me that if
But
you
some
have
people don't want to learn about it either. They're so stuck in their way that they don't want any convincing to not think how they already do.
yeah. Alia, have you noticed that? If you, or is your
Yeah,
algorithm?
like for my stuff, like I don't post as much as I used to just because like life and just not feeling like being on the camera as much. But I noticed like when I first started to detransition, I was getting millions of views on TikTok every video. And
Yeah.
it was because I had a specific and I know exactly how to get that million views, like still to this day. And it's all I have to do is post an extremely hyper masculine photo of myself or video of myself and me now. And that shock factor of like, how did she go from this look to this look is what gets them every single time. And I know that. And I try to do that for fun, but then also to lead them to my page to like see the more in-depth conversations of like who I am and what I like to talk about. And I think that's why my YouTube has like the tens of thousands of views on my videos because I don't have many. But because they see that, they're like, I want to know more. And then they go on to my YouTube and then I have that. And I will say, like, there's two things. It's like something like this where we're talking for 45 minutes to an hour. It's like a conversational piece. Like, because of our like attention span being so low now, we need to know everything and get to the point within 30 seconds to a minute. And
Yeah.
so if it's not that, we're not watching the whole thing. And that's why TikTok thrives so much. And then it's like, is the video aesthetically pleasing? Is there good lighting? And then like, let's be real, is the person attractive or not? Or do they look like crazy wearing a shot collar? Like, what is that thing that's so different and unique from the other person? Once you get to that platform where you have a million followers or whatever it is, then whatever video you're posting, whether you're going like, you see those influencers that go to like Target and film like a Target video, things like that. People are watching it now because now they want to know everything that person is doing. So it's like once you make it to that level of certain things, then you will get those crazy views on stupid videos that make no sense. But or not like stupid videos that make no sense. I'm sorry. Like the videos that are more in depth about
Yeah.
it is what I meant to say. The opposite. But like you have to like find that middle first. You have to catch them. You got to get them on the hook, and then they'll be all over your stuff. So I have noticed that. And I think it really just comes down to the attention span of people on social media right now.
I know we have to wrap up. Gabe, can you give us any update on how you're doing? You've been in the news in the past week or so. You and Isabel are getting divorced. That's how we knew you and found you and fell in love with you through 90 Day. You alluded to the fact business has been hard. Okay, can you give us any more detail about it? Almost seemed like Isabel like used you, wasn't responding to any of your calls, like can you give us any more information and there
Good
any
gracious. I don't want to get in too much into it or I'll start bawling my eyes out. But everything just changed suddenly it's like I feel like one day we're like the most perfect couple. We didn't have any problems. And then I blinked my eyes and it's like she doesn't even want to be around me. We don't talk. I'm like, what did I even do? And then I'm thinking, did I do something wrong? Is something my fault? But I literally gave her everything I could. If I had my last dollar, I'd give it to her, and I still do. I everything I ever had in my life is I feel like I'm at zero now. I have nothing. I'm starting everything from brand new, and if she could take even more, I feel like she.
And your business, the last time you were on, your business was doing well. You actually had a business for trans
So right
men.
now, GMP where it's at now is that we're in the process of just refunding everybody because
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
Like
Takes a
it's
lot of
gonna
money,
be
right?
like
To make the products, ship the products. Okay.
yeah, but even that, it's like I have no contact anymore for any new inventory. I'm telling you, everything that I've ever worked for in my life, I have nothing now. Everything is gone. And this is just being in love and
Oh,
thinking I was with the person I was supposed to. But
yeah. Could you give up
everything
so much time and money to that person and that takes away
time,
from your
money,
business?
energy, every single thing, everything. And without thank you or nothing to this day, nothing. And I'm still hoping she calls me when she needs something and
And you can find out more of what happened. Like it's that.
I have no idea what happened. She doesn't tell me anything.
Well, Gabe, is there any way that we as fans can support you? Because people love you. They're rooting for you. Is there anything we can do to help you?
No, you can just, like my videos, say hi. That's it. Just little things right now. These little comments that, even though I don't respond to everybody, it just feels good to see I'm supported. So, I just gotta start over and rebuild everything all over again. But it'll be fine eventually in time.
Whatever you need, you reach out to us. Whatever we can promote. We love you. You're incredible. I'm so grateful for you being on this show, being so open, introducing me to Alia. I mean, guys, I kind of feel like as though you two should become therapists for the I do, because you guys you're great. You both of you, I mean, you ought to open a dual practice here, because I think it helps so many parents and individuals of all ages, because you guys have lived it. You're transparent with it. You're supportive either way. You're rational. It's just like we need more voices, beautiful voices like yours. So just go to school and become a therapist. 8 years and $300,000 later.
I'm not a good listener.
You guys seem like you would be. My gosh. Okay, both of you. One thing is the documentary about kids. Is it called "Growing Up Trans"? Do either one of you remember "Growing Up Trans" or "Born in the Wrong Body"? Does either of those?
It was probably "Growing Up Trans," I think. If it's like a couple of different trans kids and like their storyline with their parents, like something like that. It probably was "Growing Up Trans."
Okay, it was on PBS. Frontline did it. I don't know.
I think that was it.
Okay.
I think so.
People are going to have questions. Guys, where can people follow you, reach out to you? Please promote your TikToks, your Instagrams, your YouTubes.
You guys can follow me at Pagoba, Paboga 1 on Instagram and YouTube. Paboga, just Pagoba. That's it. That's my name. And now I have a TikTok that I'm trying. Pagoba.
Full-time job. Alia can help you though. She's got an awesome following.
Right. Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Alia X Ishmael, my name. If you do a quick Google search of my name, you will find so many articles and Reddit and all of that. I'm all
Daily
over
Mail. You've been picked up.
Yeah, everything. And then for YouTube, it's just my first and last name. That's where I go really in depth of my story and like just reflect on the decisions that I've made when I decided to detransition and then the continuation of that. I'm very open and vulnerable on everything. I've shared photos even for my breast reconstruction for the people who need it. My documentary is at ayearintransition.com for free. It goes through my first year in my transition to male. And yeah, I'm always open to answer questions and talk to people about things. I do get loads of messages. So if I don't respond right away, there's a reason, or because you can find it on any video that I've posted before. So
love it. You both, and you respond to the haters. You're like, don't fucking veiled threaten me, bitches. I know.
Let me tell you,
I will make them
famous. I don't know if you see on my Instagram, but what if somebody bashes me? Well, we gonna make you famous. Doop, screenshot, post on the story.
Right.
Anyway, all right, that's a whole nother debate. We'll have to, okay. Well, you guys will be back. Thank you both so much. So eye-opening. Enjoy the week. I'm so grateful for both of you.
Thanks for having us, Sarah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Again soon.